I was growing up, Africa was a place to be avoided, even for black people. Our images of Africa came from Tarzan and Ramar and Sheena of the jungle. And we were embarrassed about Africa.
Yes, you talked about the effort to kind of distance, right? It was used as an insult within the community.
You black African? Oh my God, that was like the N-word. But all that changed for me. It began to change in 1960 when I was 10 years old and 17 African nations became independent. And I had a very smart geography teacher, Mr. McHenry, our only male teacher. And he was very much into current events. And I was very much into being a good student. And a lot of the current events featured these emerging new African countries. And so I memorized romantic sounding rhythmic names like Moise Chambe and Patrice Lumumba and Mogadishu, words like that. And I became fascinated with Africa, slowly but surely making my way to Africa when I was 19 years old. Africa is the home of the world's most ancient civilizations. Far too often, Africa has been thought of as isolated and static, but nothing could be further from the truth.
The roots of every family tree trace here to Africa. And so does the history of civilization.
In this series, we'll be going on a journey through 200,000 years of history. We'll explore great cities built along Africa's extensive trade networks, discover art of unparalleled beauty and technical brilliance, and marvel at thousands of years of breathtaking architecture.
What struck me watching this is that you use words like merchants and trade and engineering. It seemed like you were really trying to stress the achievements here. Why do you think those achievements have been obscured?
I think the achievements of Africans have been obscured, first of all, because of slavery. 12.5 million Africans were shipped across the Atlantic Ocean between the 16th century and the 19th century. 12.5 million Africans shipped to enslavement in the New World. And then, after 1884, which was the conference in Berlin, when European powers sat down, looked at an empty map of Africa and basically carved it up like you carve up a pizza pie. And they go, you're Spain, what do you want? You're Italy, what do you want? You're England, what do you want? You're King Leopold. He personally got the Congo. So they had to create a fiction of Africa as an empty place or a static place full of primitive people who were stuck in time. And those were ostensibly our ancestors. But the pre-colonial world knew all about Africa. There wasn't a moment really since the ancient Egyptians when northern Africa, the Mediterranean world, and the larger world was not in touch with African civilizations, with some part of Africa. The Red Sea was a highway. The Nile was a highway. The Sahara was a highway, particularly after the domestication of camels. And the Indian Ocean highways. The emperor of Great Zimbabwe ate off porcelain plates that came from China. That's the 13th century. I mean, it's incredible. Most of Europe's gold between 1000 AD and 1500 AD came from West Africa. All of our history was stolen from us. We were robbed of the history because Europeans wanted to justify an economic order which depended upon our ancestors' exploitation. We need for the facts of African and African-American history to be a normal, naturalized part of the curriculum, to be moved from the footnotes up into the text. Black History Month is great, but we need every day to be Black History Month. And what's that mean? When you take a course in the history of civilization, Africa should be there as well. And I'm not talking about mythic claims that won't stand scholarly scrutiny. I mean facts about the history of the world, which every educated person should know about. Knowing your history is empowering, and Africa stands poised on the birth of a resurgence, a new renaissance. As you said, 15% of the world's population lives on the great African continent. And knowing about this rich and splendid history will be crucial to the individual self-esteem of every African and to the collective, as it were, sense of itself of the African people.